GM.
GM,
everyone, welcome back to the SolanaFloor Weekly News Recap, where we're going to chat through, of course, Solana's biggest stories straight from the SolanaFloor newsroom. I'm joined, as always, by our senior journalist, Finn. Finn, GM.
GM, Jack, how we doing?
Great. And the one and only Mr. Thomas Bahamas also joins us. Thomas, GM.
GM, everyone, how we doing?
It's such an exciting time for us. I think this week really is welcome back, specifically because it's been a wild couple of weeks for us. So let's start maybe by addressing the big elephant in the room. 2 weeks ago, we had some sad news. It was a sad announcement. We announced that SolanaFloor was going to be winding down operations. And then honestly, the response that we received, I think, was quite overwhelming. At least speaking for myself, we saw massive support. There was a lot of frustration from the community. But overall, it was a very nice reminder, I think, of why independent journalism still matters in this space. Today, though, we are back, as we mentioned. So I'm thrilled to share some incredible news. SolanaFloor has been acquired by Jito Labs. Now we're back. We're independent. We're definitely here to stay. And before we dive into the biggest stories of the week, it's probably good that we take a few moments to acknowledge a few things, right? So a few little housekeeping bits and bobs. Firstly, I want to say a massive, massive thank you to Step Finance. Those guys were amazing custodians of SolanaFloor. They really built it from the ground up after the acquisition. As you probably know, it used to be an NFT platform. They turned it into one of the biggest news ecosystem-specific news outlets in the entire industry. And I think I can speak for Finn and Thomas at this point that we are incredibly grateful for everything that they've built. And again, thank you very much. So second piece of housekeeping, this is something that affected me very personally. The past 2 weeks, we've received an overwhelming amount of positive reactions from people saying that what we were doing was basically a public good. From the articles, the threads, the videos that we put out, the streams. We also have the big picture with Matt Hogan and other experts that join us every Thursday at 11 a.m. ET. And a lot of people were saying it's going to leave a bit of a sort of gaping hole in the ecosystem now as far as news goes, now that you guys are not going to be doing that. So that was really nice to see. And clearly the fact that what we do matters to other people matters to us. So thank you very, very much for that. Third, final piece of housekeeping here is that we're all very, very excited to be partnering with Jito. Now, these guys are OG builders. They understand the value of independent journalism, and they're sort of tech-first infrastructure providers. Good guys in the ecosystem. We are very, very proud to be acquired by them. And most importantly, they are not involved in the editorial process at all. So the editorial integrity of SolanaFloor will remain the level that it was. You can expect spicy newsletters, spicy video coverage, and all the good stuff that you love. Tweets, of course, every 10 minutes you'll be getting a tweet from our editor-in-chief and our social media team. So yeah, with all of that, I'm very, very proud to be back. Finn, Thomas, high-level thoughts. How are we feeling?
Yeah, very good globally. Very excited to be back in the newsroom. There's so much happening on Solana all the time. Markets are down, markets are choppy, but there's always so much action. There's always debates to be had. There's always shade being thrown across on Twitter that needs to be dug right through to get to the raw truth of it. So yeah, we're very, very excited to be back. Thomas, first thoughts?
Yeah, we are so back. I'm excited to be back on the stream here. And, honestly, it felt like there was a hole in the ecosystem when SolanaFloor was gone. Like, I felt it personally. I was, scrolling Twitter as one does, and, it's hard to get good information. So it really, really brings the importance of what we're doing. And I mean, to see the community reaction, people were reaching out, DMing, Telegram, whatever, seeing how we were doing, seeing what they could do to help. So, really felt that. And, I'm really glad to be back.
It is happy days indeed. Now I'm going to pull up Finn's newsletter. Finn, maybe you can start by giving us sort of a lay of the land. You have these spicy intros to your newsletter, which I love. You've definitely not held back this week either. So let's pull this up. Introduce us to this week's newsletter. I know we've been gone for a couple of weeks, so people want to hear from you. How's it looking?
Yeah, well, look, obviously, the first thing we've mentioned is, again, that the SolanaFloor is back. But ultimately, the most important thing people need to take away from this is that our editorial independence is still very much the same as it's always been. Nothing is going to change. We're going to keep giving you the same kind of information, the same takes, and the same thought process that we always have. So if you are worried that we're going to turn into a propaganda machine, that's absolutely not the case. We're very, very committed to remaining objective and remaining incredibly neutral throughout the future, essentially. Otherwise, cracking to the beginning of the newsletter, the overall theme that I'm seeing this week is that crypto is actually looking pretty good. There's all kinds of chaos happening over in the Strait of Hormuz. Oil is absolutely ripping. Markets are in complete chaos, but Bitcoin's holding up pretty well. And a big part of that is because of this new financial engineering scheme of Michael Saylor's. I'm absolutely delighted to get stuck into this. I think Michael Saylor is either the smartest man in the world or he's the most degenerate gambler we've ever seen. So yeah, really, really excited to dive into that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how he would feel if you called it an engineering scheme. For him, it's a no-brainer, right? I'm thinking of all the memes of there is no second best. For him, this is just the safest bet out there. And that's why he's managed to raise billions and billions of dollars and continue top lasting. So maybe let's dive straight into the first story here. The headline, as you can see, is SolanaFloor returns. Jito acquires independent Solana news outlet. This is super exciting news for us. Finn, did we miss anything in the introduction there? Any of the details, anything that we sort of need to touch on as far as, you know, what's been happening over the last 2 weeks, and maybe touch a little bit on the sort of void that people have felt as far as independent journalism in the Solana ecosystem? Did we miss anything critical?
I don't think we missed anything particularly there. I think what really stood out to me throughout that whole process was that the Solana community is very, very united, and everyone wants to see public goods succeed. Everyone wants to see independent journalism live on. So the fact that all the stars aligned, that we were able to continue doing what we love and able to continue providing the service for Solana is, I think, just the best outcome we could have imagined for. So yeah, very, very excited. Thank you to all the readers and viewers who make what we do possible. And yeah, let's just keep doing what we love.
Absolutely. Great to be back. Super, super happy to see all the support that's been pouring through DMs, as TB mentioned there as well. All right, story number 2 this week. This is pretty wild. It is ongoing. It is one of those developing stories, so to speak. And I had a right giggle at some of the AI-generated videos that Michael Saylor was posting, both sort of late in the weekend and earlier this week as well. Some of them are ridiculous. The comments under them are even more ridiculous. The headline here is Saylor's STRC Flywheel, that's Stretch, by the way. Flywheel is estimated to purchase over 3,600 BTC in one day. Question is, will it last? Now, Finn, Michael Saylor's famous for buying Bitcoin nonstop. He loves top blasting and bull posting at the same time, and we obviously love him for that as well, right? But now Strategy's launched this preferred stock called STRC, Stretch. They're creating a bit of a flywheel effect. It's insane. There's a lot of people bull posting about it. A lot of people are saying, nah, maybe I'm not as bullish as I was on Strategy's, on this rather, as I was on Strategy's previous products. Why do you get the sense that not everyone's sort of mega bullish on this new one?
I think a lot of people are mega bullish. I think the bullishness skews about kind of 80-20 on a percentage basis. First, let's talk about how the model works in the most highest level, in the most basic sense. Essentially, Strategy is paying out dividends at an exceptionally high rate. Where often treasuries and bonds and things like that might give you 2-3% per year. Saylor has bumped that up to 11%. They're paying out from the cash balance that Strategy has in place to acquire more capital. Basically, they're just swapping funds from investors into this immense Bitcoin TWAP that is just going to keep bidding Bitcoin at a ridiculous pace. It actually launched in, I believe, July last year. So it kind of trickled along quietly. No one really knew what was going on. But in the last week or so, you can just see in the stats here, in the last 4 days, they've acquired around $11,000 worth of Bitcoin dry powder. So they're transferring Wall Street's love of yield into a Bitcoin buying machine. Again, there is a lot of parallels that have been drawn between this and between something like Terra Luna and the USC collapse. I am excited to see where it goes, but I'm also very, very cautious because what happens when, you know, let's say Strategy runs out of cash to pay out these dividends? What happens then? Do they have to start selling MSTR? Do they have to start borrowing against their Bitcoin? Saylor's never going to sell his Bitcoin. He's been very clear about that. Yeah. There's also no forced liquidation mechanism, so I don't see an unwind coming from that. But it just feels very, very speculative. It feels very euphoric. I can't imagine that this fund continues to get the same level of interest at a way that is sustainable. Thomas, what's your read here? I know that you've been a fan of Saylor for a while. How are you feeling about this at a first glance?
I mean, it sounds crazy. It sounds like a fantastic Ponzi, right? It's it's interesting, and it's kind of an interesting time for him to be doing this, right? He's underwater on all of his Bitcoin buys at this point, right? So for him to do this, it kind of seems like he's turning up the leverage. I mean, the videos have been hilarious, like you were saying, and I don't know how sustainable it is, right? It feels like we're closer to a bottom than we are to a top as far as Bitcoin price, but this is like an area where I don't know if we've been here before, right? So he's really, it kind of seems to me like he's like dialing up the leverage on this one. Where if it turns out well, it's going to turn out fantastic, but if not, we don't know what's going to happen. I sure hope that it's not systemic, and I'm glad we're not seeing this type of product on Solana yet, right?
Well, that's my next question. Like, how long
Yeah.
before we see a Solana DAT try and replicate this, and how long does that last? Is that as sustainable? Like, there's an argument that a Solana DAT is a better vehicle for this because they have revenue, they have cash flow through staking and things like that, so they could actually offset the dividend cash burn that strategy is not able to do because they don't really have yield-bearing products. Yeah, I am skeptical. I think it's very exciting. People love to see that there's going to be $700 million of Bitcoin buy pressure in the last week, and that may continue. I'm not convinced that it's got the legs to continue to become a thing, because the more popular this gets, the more quickly that they're going to burn through the cash reserve that strategy is using. Yeah, I think there's probably a time limit on how long this can last.
Well, I think another angle there, moving away from Solana very, very briefly here, is if you announce that you're going to do something this big, and Saylor, as you mentioned, has these significant cash reserves, sort of gives a bunch of retail traders the opportunity to try and front run that and catch a bit of the upside as well. So it boosts volumes. Now, we were talking to our editor about this a few hours ago, and he said, possibly we see a very bullish weekend, and then maybe a reversal on Monday, depending on what sort of macro events do. But in a way, low volume price pump over the weekend, this is good. I can't remember the last time we had a green Friday, for example. As far as sentiment goes, we've been sitting at extreme fear for quite a while. We were down at the 8s. I think today we're at like 15 or something. So in terms of optimism, as far as CT goes, I'm happy. The AI videos, as you mentioned, are hilarious. We've got one on screen here. Do go and watch it. It's brilliant. But yeah, curious if any of our listeners here have strong opinions about Saylor, about MSTR, about STRC, about Stretch. Do let us know. Little story here as well. I was very long MSTR for a while, maybe even too long. And Beanie, who's sort of a very well-known voice in the industry, had said many times, look, the end is nigh for Saylor. Sell your MSTR. If you want some exposure to BTC, that's fine. But at the end of the day, when it unwinds, it's going to be a massive clusterfuck. And maybe you don't want to be, trying to catch a knife in that sense. I didn't listen to him, round-tripped all of it. So yeah, that's why I'm fairly neutral. I'm sort of sitting on the fence with this new product with STRC, even though it's not that new. So I hope anyone listening to this is much better trader than me, and you took profits instead of screenshots. But Finn, yeah, you and I were talking about what would happen in the event of a potential Saylor wind down, right? If it all hits the fan, what's the sort of doomsday scenario here, without considering what would happen if a Solana DAT copied this strategy? How bad could contagion get from a Saylor unwind as far as the industry as a whole at this point?
Listen, I think if there was an eventual Saylor unwind, it would be pretty catastrophic. It would be the event that people call the Bitcoin is dead tipping point. Strategy holds around 3% of the Bitcoin total supply, which a lot of people would already argue is way too much. Part of the whole point of Bitcoin is that it's decentralized and that no one has a considerably sizable share, and that's what makes it so valuable. And strategy is just going to continue that infinite TWAP to get as much Bitcoin as they can to the point where it maybe even becomes unstable. That being said, markets evidently like the strategy that Saylor's employing right now. Bitcoin's up around 9-10% since Monday. Whether that's off the back of this flywheel alone, or whether that's a wider macro hedge in these choppy markets, I'm not sure. But listen, yeah, I think if strategy unwinds at some point, I'm not saying it does, it would be a pretty hefty blow to the entire crypto market.
But would it end everything? Like, I don't know, TB, you've been around for a while in the industry. You've seen a few ups and downs as well. Do you feel that we're mature enough, that we have enough ETFs, or institutional adoption, plenty of holders? Are we mature enough that a Saylor blow up wouldn't be end days, or do you really think like we wouldn't survive it?
I don't think it'd be end days, but it would definitely rock things. I mean, the way that crypto has always gone, right? Everything's kind of downstream of Bitcoin. So, I mean, Bitcoin goes down 50%. You know, you see most altcoins go down 80, 90%, right? So that's how it's kind of always been. So for them to have this big of a stake, and for us even, you know, having to talk about the potential of them unwinding is a little, you know, disconcerting. But I don't know, you know, I don't think that it's going to be, you know, the giant risk that takes everything down. And I hope that it's not, but there's a small percentage of that happening, right?
I think if it does, we all essentially get the best generational entry that anyone could ever imagine. I think, I think that's kind of the consensus, and that's the believed truth, is that if Saylor does in fact unwind, yes, there'll be some very, very dark days, but there'll also be that generational dip buying opportunity. So I would remain optimistic. It wouldn't be the end of the world. It would just be a severely deep blip on the radar.
I would buy that dip. Of all the dips, that is the dip that I would probably buy the most. Now, all right, let's shift our attention over to story number 3. This is a pretty wild one. The headline is Pump.fun becomes the first platform on Solana to surpass $1 billion in lifetime revenue. Read that again. It definitely makes you want to do a double take. $1 billion in revenue. Now, people have come out saying, how is this possible? How can you make so much money from just launching meme coins? And, you know, yeah, it feels like not too long ago, we were talking about their $700 million revenue milestone. And the discussion back then, if you remember, we covered this quite closely. We talked about the launchpad wars that were happening at the time. The discussion was more focused around whether or not Pump.fun had extracted all of this money from the Solana ecosystem. There were a lot of people who were very salty, saying that they've taken all this money, they're not really reinvesting it. People were saying, you know, I've got all these questions about the revenue model, got all these questions about the airdrop. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? So yeah, Pump.fun, definitely a divisive name, but undeniably incredible that a Solana name can say that, you know, they reached $1 billion revenue milestone. So Finn, how the hell did we get here? And is it sort of unfair at this point, considering how far Pump.fun has come, to say that this is probably the most profitable casino in the world if you consider, you know, operating costs and how many people actually work there? You know, it's not a physical casino, but is that me being unfair?
Look, having no access to the internal workings, the internal economics of real world casinos, I can say that I would imagine that Pump.fun is still definitely, if not in the top 5, it's one of the most capital efficient casinos that the world has ever seen. $1 billion in lifetime revenue is extraordinary. It is all built off the back of meme coin trading. Whether or not you believe in that thesis, it's proven to work. They're going to continue to do that. What has impressed me though recently is that Pump.fun is actually trying to expand its sphere of influence outside of just the meme coin casino. We've seen that they are embracing other launchpads, they're embracing other dexes within the Pump app. They're adding listings for WBTC and WETH. So they really want to kind of break out of this meme coin world, and they want to start trading majors. They want to become that all-encompassing super app for people getting into the crypto world through the meme coins. So yeah, look, Pump.fun's going to continue doing Pump.fun things. They are still generating over $1 million in revenue every single day. Meme coin dominance is dropping, but they're still very present. They're still very much there. And something that I found staggering the other day, I was looking at some data, and there's been a couple of days in the past 2 weeks where Pump was actually the highest, Pump witnessed more volume than every other DEX on Solana. So more than Bisonify, more than Humidify, more than Radi, more than Arc, more than Orca. And that tells me that Pump.fun is actually, it kind of validates the thesis that they are breaking out of just meme coins. And they're becoming this massive DEX beyond the shit coins that people have been slinging, calling them the casino for. So positive steps. The other thing that popped out, and this is just a rumor, Pump.fun hasn't validated this just yet, but some website registrations are suggesting that they might be looking at going multi-chain in the future. So that was included after this article. That was an announcement that came, not an announcement, a rumor that dropped to later. There's been site registrations for Ethereum, Monad, and Base at the moment, I believe. And yeah, and Binance Smart Chain as well. So are we going to see multi-chain Pump.fun? Is that a good idea? Thomas, what do you think there?
I'm pretty sure we will see it. I feel like I've definitely heard them say in the past that Solana was the only place that made sense for meme coins. And they've played a massive part, like a massive role in the Solana ecosystem. right? You know, when a lot of people think about Solana, they think about, you know, different communities on there. A lot of it is going to be meme coins, right? You know, love it or hate it, you know, at this point, Pump.fun is like become infrastructure. And of course, other communities, other chains are going to want to bring that on. So I see that as kind of like a logical next step for them. And I mean, over $1 billion, like I still like can't really believe that they did that, but I mean, they really capitalized on, you know, that meta of meme coins where they really put together a really good product, and they've really executed really well, and they are growing out from just being, you know, a meme coin casino. And I I I think they're doing a pretty good job with it. You know, I always, you know, I did a video, you know, talking about the sustainability and, you know, whether people are making or losing money with them, because I saw some stats, and I always side with the users of Solana, right? So when I see stats that say, you know, most people are losing money while using Pump.fun, it's like, all right, well, let's investigate that. Why is that? What's going on here? But I mean, whether you like it or not, it's not going away. Meme coins aren't going away, right? Like they're ingrained in the Solana community at this point. And they played a big role in crypto in general. So to see them go to other communities makes sense. And, you know, they're not going anywhere. So that's kind of my thoughts there. What are you thinking?
Speaking of going somewhere, first of all, I would echo what you're saying. It seems they've won, right? We mentioned the launchpad wars that we were covering a few months ago. I think there is no doubt in anyone's mind at this point that there is a very clear winner in that arena. But speaking of people going away, Ben Pasternak, also a launchpad founder. I can't verify this. I saw a tweet, was it today or yesterday, saying that either he deleted his account or he deleted all of his tweets. Is he gone? Does anyone know this? Have you guys got any verifiable proof?
I don't have any verifiable proof, but yeah, he's disappeared. He made an extremely large sum of money by pretending and by LARPing as a launchpad operator, and he disappeared. And you know, no one's held him accountable to that. So that also is something that probably needs to be addressed moving forward. Is that you know, if people come and they are bad actors, we purge them quickly.
Yeah. Curious if anyone knows where Ben Pasternak is, or what the real story is. Obviously, don't go and try and find the guy in real life, you know. But if you do have any information on that, do let us know. We'll be looking into that very, very closely. And I think with that, we can probably switch over to our fourth story here. This is an interesting one. Probably doesn't need too much attention, if I'm honest with you. It's one of those headlines, but then when you dig a little bit deeper, it's definitely not nothing burger. It's very, very significant. But probably doesn't need too much coverage. It's massive for institutional adoption. We've been talking about payments, how Solana is the payments chain for a long, long time. Talking about stable coins for a long, long time. And this is massive in terms of bridging the gap between, you know, the degen culture, we're just talking about Pump.fun, and how Solana is becoming infrastructure for TradFi giants as well. So the headline, Mastercard rolls out a global crypto partner program with Solana, Paxos, and others. Finn, this is massive in a way. It's not massive in another way. So they're calling it a crypto partner program. Obviously, they've named Solana as the core contributor. There's some pretty serious names that also mentioned, like Paxos. But it's not sudden. But I think a reasonable question for people to ask is, why is Mastercard suddenly talking about crypto rails? Why is Mastercard suddenly partnering with Solana? I'll explain to you in a second why it's not sudden. But yeah, why might that be the sort of gut reaction that people are having when they see this headline?
Well, look, Mastercard, obviously one of the world's best known payments brands. Mastercard is everywhere. You can't use many debit cards without seeing the logo. That being said, Visa has made a tremendous start in the crypto card race. They have kind of an equal amount, Mastercard and Visa, of crypto card programs, but Visa still commands around 90% of on-chain card volume. So that tells a story that Visa is well far ahead, and Mastercard is desperately trying to close that gap. And they see this initiative they've started, the crypto partner program with Solana, with PayPal, with Binance, with Gemini. They are trying to close that gap, and they're trying to reassert that position as the dominant crypto card provider. I think it's positive. I think everything that helps the payments infrastructure work better is a net positive. It's the ultimate idea of crypto is we have programmable money. You know, any step towards that is a net positive. Thomas, what do you take about the Mastercard Visa divide?
You know, I think that both of these companies are just looking at this and they can't avoid crypto at this point, right? They're partnering with, you know, Solana and other chains as well. And I think that they're looking at Solana as like a potential competitor. So they're wanting to get as close as they can to it. And as far as crypto cards, like they've got a pretty good product market fit with Visa. So they need to compete, right? You know, I think that it's kind of a, you know, what we're seeing is just a lot of institutions that haven't taken things on yet are really needing some sort of crypto infrastructure. So they're trying to partner where they can. Yeah, I mean, it's bullish, but you know, how bullish will it actually be? We'll see, right?
Well, I think it's bullish for them, right? It's bullish for Mastercard if you're trying to sort of close that gap. I was mind blown, by the way, when I saw this stat that's on screen now that Visa dominates, you know, 90% of crypto card volumes. I had no idea that it was that serious. But I guess if you think about it, we'll touch on Cast in a second as well. They, I think, largely use Visa, if I'm not mistaken, and a bunch of the other big names as well use Visa. Sorry, but again, I was shocked at this 90% gap. Now, a little story. A couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, I was at a conference in Amsterdam back when I lived there called Money 2020, huge conference. World's biggest, you know, TradFi giants, payment companies, you know, the JP Morgans of the world are basically there rubbing shoulders with fintech startups. And it's a very interesting place to be. You've got some very serious sort of suited and booted types hanging out with these young, I'm going to change the world type fintech geezers. Interesting place to be. But back then, Mastercard had just announced that they were going to start dabbling, you know, dipping their toes into crypto. So it must have been 2023 or 2024, right? So it took their time. But you know, for anyone who was asking earlier, why all of a sudden have they made this decision? The short answer is it's not all of a sudden. They've been trying to get involved as quickly as possible for quite some time now, clearly. But given the size of these companies, you know, Visa, Mastercard, if you lose that first mover advantage, as I just found out, you end up, you know, only having 10% market share when your competitor has 90%. So yeah, let's see what happens with this Mastercard story. Definitely not a nothing burger, but yeah, I was shocked to say the least that Visa had 90% market share there. Did you guys know that before this story came out?
No, I had no idea, but I do believe that the crypto payment card is kind of the Trojan horse of what makes people start using on-chain finance a lot more. Credit cards are something that everybody understands. You know, you don't need to know what a wallet is. You don't need to know what a seed rate is to know that you can use Apple Pay or Google Pay anywhere in the world with crypto rails behind that. So yeah, I think more cards is good, essentially. And if this partnership program helps bring that reality forward, that's a win for Solana being a part of it.
Definitely. PayFi is net positive, I think, as far as adoption goes. Makes things easy, and it's important that things are safe. We'll touch on safety in a second as well, and we'll touch on Cast, some interesting news coming from those guys. Let's switch our attention over to story number 5. This is for all the validator nerds out there, the mev heads, the giga brains, and in jokes aside, it's important for anyone who cares about Solana's validator landscape, how validator economics are evolving. Finn, I know you love this stuff. You've been covering this for a long time now. The headline here is, what does DoubleZero Edge mean for Solana validators? So, as you all know by now, DoubleZero, led by Austin Federa, grown massively in such a short period of time. They now command, I found this out today, 46% of stake on Solana. I swear every time we talk to them, it's an extra 10%. Back in December, it would have been, right? In Breakpoint in Abu Dhabi, they were saying how 36%, I imagine. But yeah, insane milestone. So congratulations to Austin and the whole team at DoubleZero. This is very, very impressive. So I want to find out from you, Finn, about Edge, what it actually means. They've also got some pretty interesting videos, but it seemed quite fascinating to me. So you wrote the story. I'll let you dive into it. What's going on here?
Right, so DoubleZero Edge is a new product coming from the GigaBrains at DoubleZero. My understanding is that it's almost like a block data marketplace in which validators can send shreds, which is kind of a tiny chunk of a block, to market makers, to high frequency traders, to people who kind of really are deep in the weeds of Solana's micro market structure. Having the information included in these shreds is very positive for them. It gives them a competitive edge, and DoubleZero has effectively found a way for validator operators to monetize that. And obviously, validators that run the DoubleZero on the DoubleZero network also get a cut of that. But essentially, I think the overarching theme is that it's leading towards more efficient markets. you're creating an economy where there used to be one that was totally monopolized by the top 200 validators by stake. That is now being decentralized. That's being distributed to everyone who wants to contribute. So that's also a net positive. And I believe around, is it 32% of all revenue from the DoubleZero Edge marketplace is going to contributing validators. So I think anything that boosts validator revenue is a net positive. I think anything that makes Solana microstructure more efficient is also positive. And even if you're not a high frequency trader, I think you still benefit from this, because ultimately it leads to tighter spreads, better execution for the guys at the top of the chain, which trickles down to the end user who also just wants a better fill on their swap. So I think this is one of these rare things that seems positive sum for everyone involved, and hats off to DoubleZero for making it happen. Thomas, have you dived into this much?
Yeah, I've dived into it a little bit, but I mean, it almost seems like it could be a little controversial, right? We're essentially talking about validators monetizing kind of early access to block data, right? Which it sounds a little bit, like MEV with a few extra steps. What do you think about like what this does for decentralization? Does it create like a new kind of centralization risk where only DoubleZero validators can really participate, or what do you think there?
Look, I think there is an argument for that. I think as well that, like I mentioned, this is a luxury that used to only kind of be given to the top 200 validators by stake. So the fact that DoubleZero is kind of decentralizing that and is commoditizing that and democratizing that for a much larger net of validators essentially means that everyone can be involved and everyone can profit from this. So while there is money to be made by participating in the shred economy, it's not a walled garden that only the biggest and fattest validators can contribute to. So ultimately, it makes things more efficient long term, and I think the end user on Solana is going to be happy with that outcome.
Great.
Yeah, I agree. And interesting statement. I wasn't aware that Lucas had made this, but thanks for slipping this in here as well. He says, performance brought traders to Solana. Execution quality is what keeps them. DoubleZero Edge will help give market makers the tools that they need to deepen liquidity across the ecosystem. And he adds also that Jito is proud to support the infrastructure that makes Solana the best place in the world to trade. That's Jito Labs co-founder and CEO Lucas. Clearly, it seems like it could be controversial. It seems like it could be fishy, but I'm sure they've considered this. For me, what you were saying there really stands out, Finn. If it previously only the top 200 validators could participate in this, and you're sort of democratizing access to that in some way, that's great to see. I know Nikki and Layer 33 has some interesting work towards that as well. So curious to see what's going to be happening there. We'll definitely be following the story. Well, I say we. Finn will be following the story. Finn will be reporting on the story, and we will be talking about it. So Finn, thank you very much for doing all the hard work when it comes to validators and Solana's validator economy. Now, story number 6. This one's interesting. This one made me laugh. I think it's a good one to end it on here before we get to the honorable mentions. We've got a very fun dishonorable mention as well, but this made me laugh for 2 reasons. It's a pleasant reminder. It seems not so pleasant, but it's a pleasant reminder that in 2026, we're still dealing with security issues in crypto. And it's as annoying as it is. You'll see in a second that the damage has been comically small as far as what the damage potentially could have been. Now, Mr. Bahamas, I know you're a big fan of BONK. I've seen you rocking some BONK merch from time to time as well. So I'm going to ask you in a second how you felt when you read this headline. But the headline here is BONK.fun's domain was hijacked with wallet draining prompt as the hacker exploits users for only, drumroll, $23,000. So, I mean, this is funny and sad and frustrating all at the same time. So they got hit with a contract. It's not a contract exploit. It's a domain hijack, which, it seems like a fairly standard attack, one of the oldest tricks in the book. Why didn't more people get wrecked, Finn?
Look, the reason that more people didn't get wrecked is that there's not a whole lot of volume and a whole lot of action happening through Pump.fun at the moment. So fortunately, the damage was mitigated by that in this respect. But yeah, you're absolutely right. A malicious actor was able to compromise a team member's account. They planted a drainer within the website. It came under the form of a terms of use agreement. So you know how it is. You go to a website, a pop-up comes, it says sign the T's and C's, and you just do it without thinking. And unfortunately for many a trader, that was a drainer link that essentially siphoned their funds. Ultimately, yes, this is sad for everyone involved. However, a Bubble Maps investigation that followed found that around 23K was the total amount of the losses. Maybe there's more, but on-chain data suggests that that's all that's been lost so far. So relieved that it wasn't worse. And like imagine if this happened to BONK in the middle of their season when BONK was actually leading meme coin activity.
Oh, that would have been a catastrophe. That would have been an absolute catastrophe. But I saw people saying, like you've written here as well, users claimed that they'd lost over 100K. What have we sort of found that that's not true categorically?
I would hazard to say that this is probably engagement farming to a degree. It's funny to say I've lost 100K when you obviously haven't. Gets good likes. It makes the story seem a lot more dramatic than it is. As Bubble Map said, the on-chain data suggests that maximum losses was around 23K. So the damage was a lot slighter and a lot smaller than it could have been. So I think everyone's quite relieved in that respect that this wasn't a worse story than it has turned out to be. Thomas, you're a BONK.fun fanatic. You love BONK.
Yeah.
Where are you sitting?
Of course I do. I mean, everybody that was early to Solana likes BONK, right?
Everybody loves BONK. Yeah.
Yeah. The original meme coin, right? But yeah,
the greatest we've ever had, I would say.
Yeah. I hated hearing this, right? I mean, I think that it kind of shows like security is getting tougher all around, right? And this didn't have anything to do with like contract exploit or anything like that. But there's other ways that they're going around, directly on chain that can compromise your wallets, right? So I think that security in general is going to be getting harder. I think with AI, the scams are going to be getting better, attacks are going to be getting better. So I think it's a good reminder that you have to be very careful with what you're doing on chain and what links you're clicking in general. I think that this was probably best case scenario as far as it looks like there weren't that many funds that were compromised, which is a good thing. And it looks like they actually caught it pretty quick, which is another good thing. But, like you said, if this was happening in the height of meme coin season and there was millions of dollars going through, this could have been really bad. So I'm glad that it seems pretty contained, and I'm glad that they were able to do this, that they were able to catch it pretty quick. But I think that unfortunately we probably continue to see more of these type of attacks coming out, right?
And we hope to see BONK get back on their feet as soon as possible. Because,
absolutely.
As well as you've said, BONK, they are stalwarts of the ecosystem. They have been there through it all, and we want to see them continue to thrive. So
absolutely.
My full support behind BONK.fun here.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't laugh, but it is funny when you see something as potentially catastrophic as a domain exploit happens, and the damage is 23K. I don't know. It kind of makes me laugh, and my first sort of knee-jerk reaction was somebody got fired, they did something terrible, and they thought, I'm gonna, as a disgruntled ex-employee typically does, probably thought I'm gonna burn it all down. I'm gonna nuke this thing. What's the biggest damage I can do? And if that was the case, and you managed to get away with 23K, then so you need to take a long, hard look at yourself in the mirror. But yeah, I hope they deal with the consequences, as you mentioned, Finn. I hope BONK sorts this out as quickly as possible, and I'm sure the community will rally behind them. Tom, you were saying earlier that the reaction in terms of price has actually been positive. No, BONK is up 5%.
Yeah, I was like, oh no, we gotta check the price after this, and I looked at the price; it was up 5%. So whatever. There you go. Didn't affect the price too much.
No, it certainly didn't. Okay, now let's switch over to our rapid fire round of honorable mentions. I'm going to front run you here, Finn. I'm going to say I have a favorite here. I have definitely something that really, really frustrates me here. Really curious to see what Mr. Bahamas is going to like, what he's going to not like, what we're going to comment on. Take us through the honorable mentions, sir.
All right, fellas. Honorable mentions this week. Cast raises $80 million in the Series A. Incredible stuff. Well done, Cast. Love to see it. Xstocks launches its points program. Archer Exchange public beta goes live, bringing a new club to Solana DeFi. Solana records $650 billion in monthly stablecoin transfer volume, a new record across all layer ones. And there's more stats on that later that blow this even further out of the water. Super Team launches its USA chapter. I think the USA chapter of Super Team was one of the most eagerly awaited venues for them. So it's exciting to see that come to life. Cled AI announces a $5.5 million seed round. Vanish Trade and Titan integration enables private swaps for any SPL token. And Jupiter opens private beta registration for OfferBook, which is its new P2P lending protocol. Lot going on there. Thomas, what's your favorite? What stands out?
We got to go with the Super Team USA. I mean, shout out to Nikki Scans. This is awesome. I'm excited for that. Hopefully I can make it to one of those.
Yeah, good shout. Jack, favorite?
Do send us an invite. Give us a reason to fly across the pond, please, TV. My favorite here, it's going to have to be Cast. It's going to have to be the 80 million Series A round. Now, I've got a selfish reason for this and a slightly less selfish reason for this. Selfishly, I've been using Cast since the very early days. I was promised an airdrop. I'm going to be very, very salty if I don't get that airdrop. And I think many people probably agree with me. So that's the selfish reason. Less selfishly, I think they've got a pretty good team of founders. They care about PayFi. They care about innovation. And we were talking about the Mastercard news earlier as well. At the end of the day, if we want the industry to reach a point of maturity, to be adopted, and people don't necessarily know that they're interacting with crypto rails, this is a great way to achieve that. Cast just works. We did a video, I want to say late 2024. We traveled in rural Turkey, and I tried to see how many days I could go with only using Cast. And this is when they just rolled out their Cast Solana card as well. So I was using mobile payments, and it just works. And if something just works, then I think it makes sense that Rags and the team have raised $80 million in a Series A round. So that's why I'm happy here. What's frustrated me a little bit, and we're going to get onto airdrop absurdity in a second as well, is the Xtalks, launching a points program. Now, I don't know enough about this, but I've seen plenty of points programs that haven't really materialized in anything. And my, again, knee-jerk reaction here, having not read too much about it, would be how much volume do they really have and how lucrative would a points program really be? Maybe they're trying to bootstrap some attention. I'm not entirely sure. Thomas, you've been dabbling in on-chain equities, on-chain metals, the whole shebang for quite a while. As have I, but again, not on Xtalks. I was mainly using Remora. So what is going on with Xtalks? Do we think this is going to be a lucrative points program, or is it going to sort of fade into the distance like many of them do?
My reaction to that is I'm a sucker for any points program. I go after them. I mean, first of all, it's stocks. Like I like stocks. I like X stocks. I like tokenized stocks. So I like that. They've got a pretty good integration with Camino right now, where I think you get paid to borrow USDC from it. So I don't know. I mean, it's worth looking at. Do I own any right now? No. But I mean, I'm keeping an eye on it. And I mean, if there's points, I might as well go after some of them, right?
There you go. By the way, the irony of what I just said there is not lost on me at all. Saying, I like Cast selfishly because I'm probably going to get an airdrop. And then saying the Xtalks points program isn't that interesting to me. I realize that is a highly ironic position to take, but again, I'm just not entirely sure that the volumes as of now justify excitement around it. Finn, any sort of overarching comments you want to make about these honorable mentions?
So many. First of all,
Yes.
Are our Cast points worth more now, you think?
I saw maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I saw somebody saying, assuming Cast raises 50 mil versus assuming they raise 100 mil, this is how the points would look. It was a back of the envelope calculation that someone had basically put on CT, and I can't remember for the life of me what the result was. The answer is I don't know, but 80 million sort of sits nicely in between 50 and 100, closer to the 100 mil mark. So I would assume that 80 mil makes my points worth a little bit more than they were. But that assumes so many things. That assumes, first of all, that there aren't further rounds of dilution. That assumes that people don't change the value of the points that we've been given. If you have the Cast app, you can go in and click on your points, and it will tell you what the current estimate of your points is in US dollar terms. But again, I don't know if that's going to change or not. So the short answer is I hope so.
I did check, and I don't think my points or my value of points change that much. But look, ultimately, 80 million is a huge round. Well done, Cast. You deserve it. Keep doing good things. The other two stories that I really like that jump out from this honorable mentions is one, the Archer Exchange public beta. They're bringing a really cool new design to on-chain order books. If this is the kind of thing that interests you, go check it out. They're kind of bringing this new micro order book structure using multiple accounts. It's very, very cool. Otherwise, Jupiter's private beta registration for OfferBook, I think, is fantastic as well. I was a big fan of Rainfi back in the day. That was a great acquisition by them. P2P lending is a great primitive to explore instead of just using these large pool-based systems that have been in DeFi for probably I want to say almost a decade now. That's probably a bit too long, but yeah, there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of innovation going on there. So looking forward to see that go wide to the public. Now, are we ready for our dishonorable mention, fellas?
Drum roll. I've
Yes.
been ready for this since very early this morning. Since late last night, actually. I've been racking my brain on how this could happen. Finn, what is going on?
Look, Jack, go do the honors. I'll leave it with you.
Okay, okay.
Do the
So
honors.
this blew my mind. Now, listen up. Ethereum-based trader lost $50 million to an MEV attack swapping USDT to Aave via cow swap. Let that sink in. Somebody was using their phone, for context, a mobile device, to swap $50 million from USDT to Aave using cow swap, and they received a whopping $34,000, I believe. Is it 36 or 34? Anyway, they lost $49 million essentially trying to execute a swap. And the community went wild. People are asking, how is this even possible? Stani Kulichov, the Aave founder, came out and responded in a fairly well-spoken, eloquently argued way. And he's saying, look, there are warnings in place. Yes, this guy was using his phone to swap 50 mil, questionable, and the result was far from optimal. And the people were saying it's not far from optimal. It should never be allowed. As far as crypto adoption goes, TradFi folks are going to be looking at this saying, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. The optics are bad. It's been a very polarizing 12 hours, let's say, for the Aave team. A few of the comments that I found quite interesting here were people saying, oh, imagine if this was on Solana, they would be claiming a victory. I don't know. I think for someone with a .eth on the end of their name to come out and attack Solana in the wake of what's happened here is quite rich. An extra piece of context, and then I'll throw it back to you guys, is that I believe it's Titan, or is it Trojan? I can't remember now. The venue that essentially netted about $30 million from this transaction. It turns out the founder is domiciled in the UK, and a lot of the comments included people tagging him and saying, hey, look, legally, you're probably going to have to give this back at some point. So I do hope that this individual was, making a massive mistake and not intentionally doing this, because otherwise it stinks of crime. And I do hope that they get compensated. Aave has agreed to give them back the 600,000 or so in fees that were generated from the swap. So I don't know. There's a lot going on. It looks terrible from the outside. It looks even worse from the inside. Where do you guys stand?
Okay, the one that I really want to dial in there on. Sorry, Thomas, I jumped in too quickly. So you've said that Titan Builder, who was the operator who I believe sandwiched the swap, if they are supposedly legally obligated to return that to the trader, what's the line at which you are legally obligated, and what's the line at which people say, oh, that's just a MEV attack and you lose, $5 on that swap, you lose $20 on that swap? Like, is there a financial value at which something becomes like, oh, come on, man, give that back? What's the delineation?
Yeah, ultimately that's up to the FCA, right, the Financial Conduct Authority, to decide. And I think that's why a lot of people were saying, mate, you should flee the UK. Which I don't recommend that he does. But I don't know where the line is. I think legally it's probably something to do with the fact that he didn't want to execute that. Again, how do you prove that? Or that no sane person with $50 million would ever make a decision consciously, despite the notification that he was about to lose 49 million, would then go through with this. It just seems rather predatory, right? To have a system where there's only one additional layer of security or one additional notification that you have to then accept and sign the transaction, and poof, you're left with 34 grand out of $50 million. I don't know. It seems unfair. But then again, these are the rules, or this is the reality, the lack of rules in a permissionless system. So maybe it's more of a philosophical question than a legal one for the time being. But I tell you what, as soon as it becomes an FCA investigation, it will become very much a legal question, and it will no longer be a philosophical question. Thomas, what were you going to say?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a bad look any way you look at it, but these ETH whales are built different. I mean, 50 mil on a phone is just crazy. Like, no matter what way you look at that, like, I don't even know what it takes to do that, but that's insane. And then second of all, like, Aave is kind of like an institution on its own, right? Like, it's like the DeFi example that people use when people say that ETH is like the institutional asset. They then go to Aave and say, look, this is the DeFi institution. You know, it's like the best example of DeFi with years of solid performance. So for this to happen on Aave is it's a bad look in my mind, right?
It is a bad look. It is a bad look. If we want to attract even more whales, people that didn't necessarily buy ETH or Bitcoin in the very, very early days, and now they're sitting on 9-10 figures on their phones. People that actually built that wealth through companies. If you want institutions to come and put their money, whether it's on Ethereum or Solana, then this is just objectively bad optics.
Bad for all of DeFi.
Yeah, it's terrible for all of DeFi, and I hope it gets sorted out. But let me know in the comments if you think this is just it is what you get. I know a lot of people, including probably the three of us here, have fat-fingered NFTs back in the day, trying to sell or buy really quickly. It happens, but 50 mil is probably something that people shouldn't be losing. So, stat of the week and the tweet of the week. Before we wrap it up here, Finn, what do we have? This one's quite interesting.
Yeah, so just earlier we were banging on about Solana recording $650 billion in monthly stablecoin transfer volume. That is exponentially growing. You can see here in this graph that from December to January, the stablecoin volume went up 77%. From January to February, went up 76% again, and that momentum is continuing in March. So stablecoins are the lifeblood of an on-chain economy. They're bleeding over into TradFi, and they're going to become the lifeblood of the real world economy, as we've seen with cards. It's very, very exciting. If you believe in stablecoins, this is just a trajectory that's going to be maintained. Thomas, thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's crazy that how many other blockchains are being built specifically for stablecoins. And Solana, which is built for everything, is really excelling in it right now, right? 650 billion is massive. And I think there was another stat where where Solana was the #1 chain that was used as far as stablecoin volume, but it was like they took out some of the like fraudulent transactions, where Solana now is like 36% of all stablecoin transactions. So it's it's looking good for payments on Solana right now.
It is as evidenced by payments.org, which is a brilliant website and a brilliant proof of concept for showing how easy it is to send stablecoins using Solana.
Yeah,
love to see it. Great stats by June. State of Solana in a tweet. This is what we briefly mentioned earlier, the airdrop nonsense, token nonsense. What's going on here, Finn?
Yeah, so today's state of Solana in a tweet. Tweet comes from Fabiano.sol. We're a great enjoyer of your content, Fabiano. So this one here, days since teased announced airdrops: Trojan 793 days, Photon 635 days, BullX 614 days, and Axiom 309 days. These platforms have collectively made over $1 billion in fees, and they've been promising airdrops for a long time, and we are yet to have that reward. So this is, again, the state of Solana, is that we have all these trading terminals, all these platforms that are dangling the carrot, but they're not letting us eat it. Sad times.
When airdrop? When is it going to happen? Realistically, do we have to wait for the early days in the next bull? Do we have to wait for another 6-figure BTC, and then BTC dominance drops and we're looking at alt season? Like what is the catalyst going to be realistically for this $1 billion plus revenue to trickle back into the Solana ecosystem as was promised? What do we think? It has to happen, right? Otherwise, surely reputational damage and people just stop using it.
Do you care about reputational damage once you've made $440 million?
That is the question.
Yeah, I mean, they just don't even need to make the airdrop at this point. But I mean, imagine if they started all doing airdrops. That would really like fire the trenches back up.
Well, that's another thing, right? We were talking about this with the XStocks points program announcement. As far as bootstrapping attention and liquidity, it's great. It works. It functions. And then if you're a name like BONK or a name like Jito, and you actually care about the ecosystem, and you do go ahead and execute a massive airdrop, then you build a very strong community of people back you for the foreseeable future. And that doesn't seem like it's going to change for BONK or for Jito. Many other names, but just two that come to mind here. So yeah, I hope that in the coming months we see a bullish reversal. I hope that we see many, many more Green Fridays as we're seeing today. And I hope that this $1 billion finds its way back into the Solana ecosystem. Speaking of $1 billion, Pump.fun, I guess, is another name, right? That maybe should be added here.
Yeah, I was surprised to see it wasn't included in Fabiano's tweet, because it would have been probably around July that they would have said airdrop is coming when they initially announced the token ICO. That was, where are we? That was about 8 months ago, so not as long as some of these names mentioned here. But yeah, people are desperately waiting for that pump airdrop that continues to elude us. Absolutely.
Fingers crossed it does find its way into the Solana ecosystem. I know there's a lot of people eagerly waiting for it. I certainly am. It would excite us a lot. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is all we have time for today. If you want Finn's full breakdowns and the full newsletter that you saw, then go to SolanaFloor.com and subscribe to his newsletter. It is delicious. It is spicy. Most of all, it's funny. And don't forget that on Thursdays, we have our live stream show with Mr. Thomas Bahamas called The Big Picture. That will be coming back very soon, I promise you. And you will learn a lot from our experts joining as well. That's another promise from us. Now, Finn, Thomas, thank you both for enlightening us. It's great to be back. GN to you both. And I guess we'll catch up early next week.
GN, fellas. Thanks again. It's a pleasure.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. GN.